Welcome to The Economy. How do you measure that? Where we break down how we measure what's really going on in the economy, one transaction at a time. I'm your host, Jim Tebrake. Today's episode, World Cup prize money. How do you measure that? The FIFA World Cup is not just the biggest football tournament in the world, it's also a massive financial event. For the 2026 tournament, FIFA announced that the winning team's football association will receive $50 million in prize money. Even teams eliminated early will receive millions simply for participating. But here's the question. When FIFA pays prize money to national football associations, how does that show up in the balance of payments and the national accounts? To help us understand this, I'm joined by Sanjiv, one of the editors of the S&A, so really the right person to talk to about this. So Sanjiv, welcome.
Thank you, Jim. Much appreciated being here, and thank you for the invitation.
Okay, so Sanjiv, now suppose or when Canada wins the World Cup and FIFA pays the Canadian Football Association $50 million, what is that and how do you record it in the balance of payments in the national accounts?
So just before I get into the detail of your question, Jim, excellent. Just to say, as you know, I'm a passionate football fan and I love national accounts even more so. But just to show, there's a picture here of Pele and myself in 2016. He's probably the most iconic World Cup player ever. And I spoke to him and he remembered me on the second occasion, thus the Brazil shirt this afternoon. So I'd like to take a moment to provide a slightly wider picture. Many countries are affected by the prize money. According to the published accounts of 2026 World Cup prize money, as you say, Jim, it's massive. FIFA is a non-profit institution, but it will be providing prize money, a fund totaling 727 million US dollars. That's a 50% increase than the previous World Cup in Qatar. However, this was further increased in April earlier on this year by 15% to 871 million US dollars. So in addition, as you mentioned, to all the countries in the qualifying stages who each received 2.5 million US dollars. At the tournament, there's 48 countries, and they will receive a minimum of 10.5 million US dollars. And then for the winner, a hefty 50 million US dollars, as you mentioned, and possibly Canada. We don't know. Now, coming to your specific example, Jim, under BPM 7, the payment is generally treated as a current transfer from a non-resident to a resident. Under 2025 S&A, this would not form part of GDP or gross domestic product. The key reason is that the payment is tied to the outcome of the tournament, winning or participating, rather than being a direct payment for the purchase of goods, service, or payment for labour. So from Canada's perspective, the prize money is recorded as a current transfer receivable from abroad.
Okay, so I mean, that's a bit surprising to me because I've always seen these players as, in some ways, entertainers and offering a service, if you would. So this isn't an export of services?
Not in this case. The players and teams certainly perform in the tournament to varying degrees, but FIFA's prize structure is based on competition results and participation. So in a sense, that makes the payment clearer or closer in our technical terms to it's a tournament award or a redistribution of tournament revenues. The point you're indicating is it's rather than a direct payment for goods, services or labour. So it is important to note the prize money payments are different from the delivery of the tournament, where the tournament delivery generates productions of goods or services, which takes place and contribute to the host economy's GDP, as well as export of services.
Okay, so let's do the accounting for this, kind of the puts and takes, the debits and the credits. So where would Canada say in this case see this in their accounts, in their statistics? What's coming in, what's going out?
So Statistics Canada, from the Canadian perspective, there'll be a credit entry in the current account under current transfers receivable. Then there's a matching equal and opposite entry in increase in financial assets because the money is being received from abroad. On the other hand, from FIFA's side, in their accounts, there's a current transfer payable to a non-resident, and they would have a corresponding reduction in financial assets. This will also apply to all countries receiving prize money from FIFA, whether they qualified for the tournament finals or not.
Okay, so this affects Canada's income from the rest of the world. Of course, the better they do, the greater their income, and in this case, it's going to be $50 million. But yeah, is that really how it works?
Well, I say exactly, but if Canada win, I'd like to sort of see you as a new fortune teller. But it does improve Canada's current account balance because it represents an inflow of resources from the rest of the world.
Okay, so we've been talking a lot about the balance of payments in the international transaction because FIFA's outside of Canada. Canada's receiving something. What about GDP? Like, is that 50 million go in GDP? Do we see a little bump in Canada's GDP?
No, the 50 million prize money, as I mentioned, does not affect GDP. Now, GDP measures production of goods and services that occurs in Canada. Thus, the activities in, say, hosting matches and preparing for those, any memorabilia, etc., that is just Canadian generated, etc., will contribute to increasing Canadian GDP. This prize payment is treated as a transfer of income. It does not cover the production of new goods and services. So it affects gross national income and the balance of payments, but does not affect GDP itself.
Okay, so last question then. So prize money, I mean, that's not the only money that FIFA distributes to countries. I mean, they give money for the preparation of the tournament. There's some subsidies that go on. All this other flows, are they recorded in the same way, different way? How does that work?
In general, yes, but there may be some specifics, smaller amounts that we would have to allocate to different parts of the accounts. But in general, yes, these payments are typically treated as current transfers because they're intended to support the participation in the tournament rather than the purchase of either a good or a specific service.
Okay, well, I mean, thanks a lot, Sanjiv, for explaining all this to us. These complicated flows and just understanding what's income and what's production and all those details. So I really want to thank you for joining us today. And so the next time a team, most likely Canada, lifts the World Cup trophy and celebrates a massive payday, remember, behind the confetti and the headlines, there's a statistician like Sanjiv figuring out how to measure it. I'm Jim Tebrake. See you next time.